how do you know if your website is actually performing or has all the proper building blocks in place? There are tools out there that you can use, some of which, in fact, most of everything I'm going to show you today is free. You don't have to pay for these services. These are things that you can actually just sometimes just plug in your web URL and it gives you a back. So it's kind of cool that you don't have to pay for this information. Of course, they're hoping that information, you're sitting there scratching your head thinking, okay, how do I fix it? And that's what they're there for. They can charge you for that kind of stuff. But just some things with regards to website analysis. In other words, is my website functional? Is it healthy? Is it operating? So, but even with a smaller number, it would be a bit tedious and somewhat of a task for you to go in every single day and make a single page comes up, every single link on every single page works, and so on, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's not something you'd look for every single day, right? So from the standpoint of functionality, that's what I'm talking about. You put information out there, and when you put it out there, of course, you probably go out and you check, make sure, okay, does it look like the look? Is the picture actually coming up that I told to be there? All that stuff. But after it's out there and you've checked it that initial time, yeah, you might revisit it every so often, or if you're referring a client or someone to it, you might jump out there and make sure it's there or whatever. But on a regular basis, you're not really checking to see that it's working. And like anything else related to humans, things break down. Links get lost, pictures get misplaced, something gets deleted, the host updates their software, something happens that now something's not working right. Well, that's what the tools are meant to do. They are out there to do kind of a once-over to say, okay, is everything working properly? Do you have all the files in the right spot? Do you have any broken links? It'll check to see if you have the foundational pieces for optimization. Some of them will actually give you some kind of a score to tell you how you're doing with regards to function. And I tell people, and that's support for all the slides here. If you're getting into any of these and it gives you a score, like HubSpot and WooRank, those will both give you a score. So, for instance, I went in and I had SBDC site up against one of these, and I think it came back and said I had a 68. It's good or bad? Well, you don't know. Obviously, on a scale of 100, that's not so great. You could do a lot better, and that's true. But the fact is, the 68 is more than a benchmark. So the next time I run it, did I get a 65? Did I get a 72? Which direction am I going? So anytime we talk scores in here, think of it that way. Don't worry so much about, oh, I'm only a 68 on the scale. Worry more about, oh, I'm doing better, I'm doing worse as I make change. Google Webmaster Tools. If you have a Google account, if you have a Gmail account, that's very important that you would get one of these. Because a lot of the tools we're talking about, anything that's associated with you have to have a Gmail account and a Google account. Next thing we encourage is primary research. It is what it sounds like. You're going out, you're asking people for information directly so that you can get a pulse basically on not your site, but things within your industry that may impact the content of your site. So if you're doing anything that's social media oriented, either in relation to your site or as your web presence, these days, businesses really have a choice again. I say again because early on with the web, they had a choice then, do I have a website or not? Into the phase of if you were a business, you had to have a website, as simple as that. Now we're back to, do I need a website or not? Because now you can avoid having a website and just have a web presence like Facebook and Twitter and all of LinkedIn, things like that. So yeah, you get into the social elements of things, and the more you connect those back to a regular website, the more time it requires. But you have a situation here where you have to sit back and say, okay, if I'm putting all this stuff out here, what am I going to write about? What should I be putting on my website? What content should I be putting on my website that's relevant, that's going to capture people's attention? Well, how do I figure that out? Well, some of these tools will help you do that. So you can just go out and you can start asking your constituents, what is it you want? We're talking about that just before class. Let's survey the user base, find topics are of interest, and bring those classes here, specifically teach exactly what somebody might be asking for, or the group here in town might be asking for. SurveyMonkey is one that you can use free. You can get up to 10 questions, and you can send that out to, I think, up to 5 email addresses at a time, and it will bring the information back in an organized fashion, stats, the whole bit. So that's one thing that we typically have small businesses, first going out to maybe find out about a new product or put on a seminar, or just in general want to know how they're doing with their clients. So that's a good tool to use. Google Alert, not on this one already, you really should sign up for this one. This should be like top of your homework from this class, is to go back, get on Google, set up Google Alerts. What Google Alerts is what it sounds like. If you go in there and say, okay, Google, I want to know anytime my name pops up on the web. When you're out there scouring the web for all of this information, if you come across my name specifically, I want to know about it. And Google, it'll send you an email and say, hey, I just found Earl Gregorich. Click and go see what I found. And then, of course, you start using your entrepreneurial mind. Okay, I can find anything comes across with my name. Well, I should be able to comes across on my business, my product name, my competitor's name, all these three related topics. So you can have quite a list on that would feed you saying, hey, here's something new on that product, that name, that competitor, industry. And that'll help you generate ideas. So what I'd be putting on my website, or maybe you get this little news snippet that through your other circle you may not have otherwise found. So that's a good service to have, and that's all automatic. It does take some time to set up, because you can imagine, Google's bringing in quite information. It's like drinking from a fire hose. You put just a name out there, and any combination of those two words or whatever is going to get a ping back, and you can drive yourself nuts initially. So you may have to go in there and tweak, say, okay, I only want if the name is in this order, spelled this way, whatever. So it's good to keep an eye on things. You don't want to end up somewhere and not know that you were there. You don't get blinded by somebody. But it's also good to generate some ideas. Then Eventbrite, if you're doing any kind of events, even if it's a sale or a gathering at the organization, you could use Eventbrite. That's also charged. As long as you're not charging people to come to the event, it's free to you. And basically what this does is it manages your event for you. You go in, you put your event on the calendar and tell it when, where, how people can get there and all of that. And then you can monitor the interaction of folks that are coming and going, looking at that event. And the other thing is it'll put it on its larger sort of events. So if I'm in the Eaton area, know what's going on in any particular section of time, I can put in there where I am going on, and your event would come up. I may not otherwise ever have had any other way to know that it's going on, but Eventbrite will give that to me. And then you get information through that platform as to how many people have seen it and so on. So it's another way for you to determine, am I getting anything back from all the stuff I'm putting out on the web? So there's some good tools just to get straight information right straight from the client. Since we're talking about social media, so here's some tools here. If you have multiple platforms that you're working with, sometimes it's a hassle to go in and write something on Facebook, and you go over here and you sign on and you're right there, and you just sign on to Facebook and you're right there, and so on. One of the more popular tools that allow you to once and schedule things out is called Hootsuite. And Hootsuite has a tracking and analysis section to it as well. To be careful I don't get on the analysis side of things and not just turn this into advertisements for all of the different platforms. But Hootsuite will allow you, like I said, you go in there and you write one posting, let's just say. And you can click, okay, I want that to go to LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook, and not the other 3 or 4. And you just check off what you want. And you can hit submit it right then and get all of those. Or you can say, here's 3 entries. I want this one to go Monday, I want this one to go out next Wednesday, and I want that one to go out 2 weeks from now on Friday. So if you're looking for something to just kind of consolidate things a little bit more wisely, Hootsuite does that, but it also gives you, like I say, gives you a report. Just knowing that there's somebody on the other end is nice. I mean, again, you're putting a lot of effort in this, just knowing that, yeah, somebody did actually read this and click on it. That really is good information to have if you want to pay for the extra. That's at least knowing somebody picked up the phone on the other side is a good thing. Facebook ads, if you're heavily using Facebook's tools, you can use their Insights program. Also give you some statistics. I'm not a big Facebook user myself. I do have a business page, I do have a personal page. I got my personal page so I could keep track of my kids when they were going through college. That was the reason. But then I got my business page on there just so I could stay up with what's going on. So Facebook has its own analytics. It's called Insights. And then there's one called Twitalizer, which is more or less just a scoring type of a thing. It goes out, sees how popular you are on the Twitter platform and what your tweet most associated with, so to speak. So if you want to get a pulse that you're doing on Twitter, you can use that one there. Cloud's the same way, but Cloud looks at all of the media all at once: Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, all the ones that you sign up saying, hey, this is me and this is how you find me. It will come back with a score and say, overall, in the social media world, you have a score of X. Okay, so that's a good one to benchmark yourself to see how well you're doing. Analytics, we talked about a few of these. Google Analytics, this one extremely useful, getting more and more useful. Back when analytics first came on the scene, it was basically no different than what you could get from the log files. Who was, how many people were coming, what pages were they looking at, how long were they spending, stuff like that. But now Google Analytics has gotten much deeper into things. They can actually tell you what demographics of the person are that are coming to your site. So they come in and Google can tell you whether or not they're male or female, what age group they're in, what their interests may be, things like that. So something that's valuable to you, and for most businesses and organizations, that is very valuable information. And you might want to sign up for that. That is going to take a little bit of geekiness to get that instilled, because there's some adjustments that you need to make to your code in order to make it happen. So just be aware of that. Outbound marketing, all three of these tools give you the ability to see, again, if there's somebody on the other end of the phone. If you go right now and you take all your email addresses and just send an email blast out to everybody on your contacts through your regular email tool that you have on your laptop or desktop, the only way you know that they did or didn't get it is if you get a bounce back saying, hey, I'm on vacation, this mail address is no longer valid, or mailbox is full, or something like that. That's the only way to know that there was any kind of effort on the other side, right? Well, any of these tools here, it'll tell you whether or not the email actually successfully made it to the inbox. It will tell you whether or not it actually opened. It'll tell you if they actually clicked on something inside of that email. And it'll keep track of all these analytics for you so that you can actually see what is the success rate of my emails. So it takes a lot of that guesswork out. And a lot of times, this will allow you also to kind of practice unit lines, because obviously that's the key trigger as to whether or not somebody's going to open your email. You may send an email out with this subject line this time, and a very similar, if not the mail out again with a different subject line. Find out what your bounce rates are on those and determine which one of those works better. There's a lot of how-tos on how to write good subject and how to do good content. But Constant Contact, you actually submit your email to their tool when it comes back and says you have an X percentage chance of your email getting caught in a spam filter or kicked out. And then your offline tools, things that you can use that are pretty much not involving the web. I like to incorporate phone bills into my analysis. One very easy strategy to use for small businesses or organizations is simply take a phone number maybe that you already have that's not being used all that much, the fifth number in the HUN group that rarely gets hit, pull out the HUN group and then assign it to all web activity. So you put that phone number on the web only, and the only way it ever gets exposure is if somebody's on the web. Every month when the phone bill comes in, you know that number right there generated 20 calls, therefore was web traffic. And you can do that specifically for the web in general, do it for specific web promotions, radio promotions, or printed promotions, or whatever it may be. So it's inexpensive to get an extra line these days. So just think about that as a possibility. Good old-fashioned customer interaction. It's a shame I have to put there, but many small business owners these days, it's like they put the website out there and then they step behind the curtain and just wait for things to happen. They don't answer the phone anymore. Emails are sparse. So just simply talking to the client. Don't give that up. Point of sale survey. You got somebody on the phone, you got somebody at the front desk, whatever. Nothing wrong with still having that old-fashioned checklist right there of the target demographics to capture on the people that come and go. It does a couple of things. One, it allows you to cater that specifically when we're coming through the door, and two, it reminds the person that's there, hey, I need to be asking these questions. So don't throw rocks at that one. We used to do that all the time, and then we get these gadgets and we walk away from that. It's good information to have. If you're a retail or your business is heavily impacted by flooding, I would also encourage you to keep track of the weather on that as well. Sounds kind of crazy. You don't want your numbers to get skewed because of a weather event, and then you'd be sitting there weeks later trying to analyze all this and think, what happened there? We didn't see anybody for hours of the day. And here there was thunderstorms or something. And then just holding customer appreciation events from time to time. That's a good time for you to get some feedback. Throw some promotions in there for long-time clients. Have them send back data points that you want to capture in order to participate in a program or get a promotion or something like that. So let's talk about then some of the actual data points that you're going to come across that you'll need to spend some time on. Here's some of the things that when we're analyzing a site to see if it's actually being successful, these are some of the data points that we go over. First and foremost, unique visitors. This is how many actual people coming on a regular basis. When I say unique visitors, it's very possible, especially in sites that it sounds like we have here. Somebody could come today at 8 o'clock in the morning and maybe back around and come back next Wednesday and so on. How do we count that? Is that 3 separate visits, 1 visit? How is that? And you can set up your analytics to track it in accordance to whatever you think makes the most sense for unique visitor. Most sites by default will give it like a 5-day window. If a person comes and then comes back again anytime within a 5-day window, that's a visit. It's considered 1 unique visit. But again, you can go in there and change. So that's first and foremost. How many people are coming to the site? Source of that individual, where did they come from? Did they come to us from Google, Yahoo, or a search engine of some sort? Did they just type in the name straight and come to us? Were some other website somewhere else that maybe has a link to us that now we can see that traffic from them? Where was the referral source? Just think of it that way. Pages visited, we want to know what they're actually looking at when they come in. You can see what pages are the most popular, which ones are the least popular, and of course those that are popular, you might want to make sure that the information on there is up to speed and up to date. Bounce rate. If somebody comes to your website, regardless of the page that it is, and they hit the page, turn around and leave without viewing any other pages, that's called a bounce. That obviously would indicate that they didn't find what they were looking for. So they typed something into a search engine most likely, and they got your result back, but when they got to your site, it wasn't what they looked for. So that would indicate that your text, your content, really isn't relevant to what the search phrase is. And you can go in and see what search phrases used to find your site. So that normally points to the fact that we are in this every single day. We talk the talk, know the lingo of what we do every single day, but That's not what our client calls it, say. So if you're having that issue, bounce rate would be a good indicator of that. And you'll notice on some of your pages, your bounce rate will be really high, some will be really low, and so on. Again, you gotta use some common sense with that, because sometimes, like, I've been out of shape if my bounce rate on my contact page is really high. Because frankly, if they came, saw the contact information and left immediately, they may have just picked up the phone and called me. That's fine. They send me an email. That's fine. But if it's my homepage or a product that I has my bread and butter product on it, now I've got problems if that bounce rate's high. So take that one with a grain of salt. Just talk about keyword phrases, and these are pretty well dead, overused. Us geeks really abused that with Google, and Google came out and said, okay, enough with the keyword thing, we're not doing anymore. They still monitor it, they still use keyword phrases to determine what your relevancy is for your website, but it's not a case where you can really tweak them and have any hope to impact your search engine results. They just don't do it that way. But there again, as we were just saying, just to identify what is it people are looking for when they want to find you, that's a good one to check. And then conversion, you yourself, each of you have in your minds what a conversion is for your organizations. You know, is a conversion the fact that somebody came to the site, they read enough, they picked up and called me. They came to the site, they read enough to where they filled out a form online and we got a result from that form. They actually purchased something, they signed up for an event. You know, what is a conversion? And obviously you get 5,000 people to the site over the course of a week, you got 3 people sign up for an event, simple math, there's your conversion, right? Again, that's just a number that you want to try and improve on. 3 out of 5,000 might, I don't know, each individual company is different. There's also some calculated data points out there, and they typically involve algorithms and higher math than any of us probably ever want to think about. But the Google page rank obviously is the one that everybody's shooting for. They're really gunning for that. 1 through 10 in Google. In fact, these days 1 through 5 in Google. Most people don't even scroll down anymore. So it's pretty important that you understand in general what that's all about. Nobody's going to know what the item is, but what can I do to my website to help that out? We have a 2-hour class, nothing but that. Conversion rate is what we were just talking about. You will come up with your conversion is, set up a simple math for that, and then calculate that. Then there's this one out here called Alexa Rank. I throw it out there just so you know that there are some sites out there that will do these kinds of things. They come out and say, okay, here's your website compared to the rest of the world out there. Here's where you rank. Small businesses, in fact, probably 90% of the small businesses I run into never have an Alexa rank because they're just not big enough. They don't command enough traffic to get that. But I throw it in there just as kind of grins. I still throw my site up against it every so often. How do we use all this stuff? I myself recommend that you have a home-based website. I'm not a big fan of the web presence for 2 primary reasons. One, stuff you put out there in a social media platform to hang your hat on is, this is us. Whose is it? You put data on Facebook, you put pictures on Instagram, whatever, on LinkedIn. Is that data yours? You put it out, that doesn't mean it's yours. They can do with whatever they want. And you decide to move from some other social platform, chances are you're not, at least not easily going to be able to take information and put it over here now. So that's one primary reason. The second reason is their whim when it comes to design and access. If you've been on Facebook for any length of time, you probably went through the Facebook switch to the timeline format. Oh man, we had businesses up in arms for that because they worked long and hard to get their Facebook pages looking great for their client base, and then literally a drop of a hat one night they wake up the next day and everything's a mess. And they had no input on that, nor could they do anything about it. Yeah, they could resort back to the old one, 30 days, 60 days, something like that, but Facebook said, nope, this is the way it's going to be. Well, you were at their whim. So those are 2 really good reasons why I say you got to have a website. Now, you got the Weebly's and you got some other template type formats, and you got IT departments can take it for you sometimes, but WordPress is one of the more popular platforms out there, and it's one that I highly recommend because it is very easy to use. It's right in the same type of a setup as the two that you're probably working with. Basically, if you can fill out a form, you can run WordPress, and it can be free. You go to word.com, you can set up a free account just to try it out. Even if you want to pay for it, you should be able to get a site set up for less than $100 a year. And that can be full-blown e-commerce if you want it to be. So it's very inexpensive to run. So set up a home-based website. Start using some of the SEO checking packages out there that we cover, rank is the one I'm using for this example, just to make sure the site's operating properly, has the elements in place, search engine optimization elements in it. Set up Google Webmaster Tools so you can monitor the actual health and the content of the site to make sure that it's performing well with regards to what Google expects. Use SurveyMonkey out there to, even if you just send out something early, say, hey, we got a new website, check us out, tell me what you think. What should we be writing about? What's working on the site? What's not working on the site for you? And then, like I said earlier, set up Google Alerts so you know if people are talking about you, your product, or your competition, who they are. I put Hootsuite together so I can manage the social media side of things, because especially if you're using WordPress, your home base, you can incorporate a lot of the social media platforms into that site. Anytime you post to your blog, it will automatically tweet it or automatically your wall. Set up Google Analytics to track the actual numbers outside of your log files that you have. Use a MailChimp to get out there and email promotions or announcements to your customer base. And then, I said earlier, use that phone bill then to maybe monitor, maybe your call to action is call now, and have it right on that phone number so that you can monitor the conversions on that. So that's just kind of a possible strategy that you could use. Some things are to the data, just make sure that when you're comparing data, that you're treating it as though you're financials. You would compare this quarter to the same quarter last year, or this year's to date to the same period year to date last year. Just try to keep that as consistent as possible. Knowing what your most popular content out there is very important, because obviously that's what keeps the steam. You don't want to be writing about things nobody cares about. We talked about what users call your website, what you call things on your website. Make sure that there is some consistency there. Set up your own conversion. Make sure that you've got some formula for that, and make sure that formula stays consistent. There's nothing wrong with tweaking it as time goes on, but you don't want to calculate it this way today and a completely different next time and a completely different way the third time, and so on. It becomes useless at that point. Landing pages and exit pages. If you see a page becoming a consistent landing page, because as you probably know, when you go out there and you search in a search engine, it doesn't always send you to the home page, right? It can send you to any page in the website. So be aware of what the content is on landing pages, because that obviously is what's getting the attention of not only the search engines, but the people. So that would be information that you would want to try and now infiltrate to the other pages of the site somehow, so that you could get some wider exposure. You can actually get a map overlay if you're using the Google tools. You can bring up a page on your website and overlay it with a map, and Google will put on where the hot spots are on the page, so to speak. Here's where people are spending the most time on pages. So if it's not evident through the raw data, you can get a little form of that through the map overlay at Google. If you're on the fence of how broad is my exposure, or how broad should my exposure be, you can also get the demographics from some geography. Google can tell you obviously what country the people are coming from, but also state, what city, and you can get down to now localities. Zip code information, basically. With Google, you can tell exactly where people are coming from, which, if you're a geographic-centered company, very important. So this is just kind of a visual representation of what we've talked about with regards to strategy. In this example, I'm using a flyer, a radio ad, WordPress is my home base, and then some social media here. And I'm saying I can use my phone bill or a unique web page. That's one thing I didn't really touch on. With a website, you could create a page that is specific to a radio advertisement or a print advertisement or a flyer, that the only way traffic's going to get there is if they actually had that in hand or heard that on the radio. If you do that, then you know when you look at your analytics, that's the actual conversion, that's the actual return on investment of that radio advertisement or that flyer. That's the only way that traffic could have gotten there. So that's a good way to use that. Grouping of tools there for your WordPress site, the tools that we talked about for social media, and then just some examples on how you would use that, and then follow up with the surveys and the emails.